What should you put in a diversity statement? And what are the things that you need to avoid in a diversity statement? What are the most common mistakes students make when they are writing their diversity statement? For those of you who are new, my name is Sydney Montgomery. I am the CEO of Montgomery Admissions Consulting, and I specialize in working with first generation and minority law school applicants. And today we are talking about diversity statements. I know that as you're preparing your applications, it can be really easy to just focus on your personal statement. And I don't want to say just focus on your personal statement because your personal statement is very important. But what about the other essays? What about the optional essays? And one of those optional essays is a diversity statement. Now, it's not required, hence optional, but I genuinely believe that most people can write a very good and compelling diversity statement. But I want to take some time to talk to you a little bit about what that is and what those common mistakes are that you can avoid as you begin to draft. Now, of course, I want you to let me know in the comments, let me know where you're listening from, let me know where you are in your journey, let me know if you've started your diversity statement, if you're struggling somewhere, if you need help. I also want to let you know that down in the link below, you will see a guide to diversity statements. It is another one of my little mini courses. It has information for you, a complete downloadable guide, several different samples, some videos from me, some templates to use as you're organizing your thoughts. And y'all, it is only $27, okay? Because I know it's really stressful right now, and I know that the last thing that you want to be doing is trying to figure out what goes in my diversity statement. I don't know if I should write one or not. I'll just skip it. It's too hard. I don't want you to do those things. I want you to have the strongest application possible, and I want to make it affordable for you to do so. So go ahead and grab that link below. Like I said, it's only $27, and you will get guidance and you will get just the information and resources that you need to write a strong diversity statement. So just a brief overview, I did release a video on what goes into a diversity statement, so make sure you check that out as well. If you're not subscribed to me on YouTube, now is the time. Subscribe. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, make sure that you're subscribing so that you don't miss any information this application season. We are firing videos out. We are firing blogs out. Okay, so your diversity statement is a different essay than your personal statement. There really shouldn't be any kind of overlap, and it's a chance for you to show how your diverse experiences have given you a perspective that might be different than others, that might contribute to the law school community. And a lot of times people get confused when they see the word contribute. Sometimes they will think, oh, they're asking, how does it contribute? I should talk about what I want to do at that school. No. There are a lot of different ways you can contribute. Just you being there at school is contributing. If you have a perspective that will help your classmates, if the way that you see the world will make you a better citizen of the law school community, a better colleague, a better student, a better classmate, a better friend, if you are going to help be a leader at the school because of the experiences that you have had, that is how you are contributing. And that's really the takeaway for all these diversity statements. There's a lot of different prompts. You'll see it worded different ways. In that complete guide, I kind of give you some sample prompts so you can see just how varied diversity statement, optional statement, essay prompts are. But you do want to be thinking about, okay, yes, I have this diverse perspective, but what's the takeaway? How is this going to contribute? How are my perspectives going to add? How is it going to be a value add and a benefit to the law school community that I'm going to? And it doesn't have to be about the law, right? You could just have a perspective that causes you to interact with others and see the world differently. And that is rich and beautiful in and of itself. So I want you to think a little bit more broadly about these terms. And while we're thinking broadly about terms, I want you to think broadly about the term diversity as well. So what is diversity? It's not just socioeconomics, race, gender, sexual orientation, religion. I mean, it's all of those things and so much more. perhaps you're a first generation student, or perhaps you had the unique experience of being the caretaker and raising your siblings. Maybe there's a certain upbringing that you have had or a life experience that's very different and unique. Maybe you're a professional athlete or musician. Maybe you were a missionary kid and you traveled the world and you moved. You're a military kid and that's how you grew up. Maybe you're a military veteran. There are so many different ways that we can think about diversity, right? Again, it's really thinking about diversity of thought. How are your experiences different than others in such a way that you are going to have a nuanced and perhaps beautiful experience or perspective to share with your classmates? Now, when we talk about common mistakes that students make, they really do fall into a few categories. One of the most common mistakes that I see students make is that they see the word diversity and they say adversity. And you've heard me talk about this with your personal statement too. Now, I'm not saying that you cannot talk about adversity. If you have something that you've really overcome, this is the place to write it. Like, your diversity statement is definitely a good place to write it if what you've overcome does not tie into your reason for going to law school. And if you haven't already, check out the podcast that I did with Spivey Consulting on diversity and adversity in law school admissions with Derek Meeker and Mike Spivey. They're fantastic. It's a really good podcast. I think it's probably one of the most meaningful podcasts that I've done in terms of guest appearances, just because of the authenticity of the topic and how I feel transparent we all were on that podcast episode. So make sure you definitely check that out. But diversity doesn't have to mean adversity. You don't have to talk about something hard. You can talk about something beautiful. Oftentimes, diversity statements are my favorite essays to read because the writing has the opportunity to be introspective, to be beautiful, to be meaningful, to be heartfelt. Sometimes when we think about culture, we're like, oh, these are all the ways that my culture has negatively affected me. But sometimes we can think about all the beautiful things that come from our culture. The food, the smells, the dance, the colors, the family. What values has your culture given you? What beliefs do you have? What experiences do you have with your family or your culture that really aren't in any other part of your applications, but really make up such a core part of who you are? And that's important too, because your diversity statement should really talk about an identity that is core to who you are, such that if they were only to read your personal statement, your application would not seem complete because they are missing a core part of your identity. But focusing only on what's hard is not always best. I see this a lot often with minority students because we are thinking, okay, well, what are all the ways that it's been hard to be Black? I'm just going to get frank and honest with you guys for a second. You guys know I keep it 100 all the time. I am, very transparent. I see a lot of essays about this racist incident or, being the only Black person in the room. And obviously I've had those experiences too, right? I mean, almost most Black people have had those experiences. And I'm not saying that to diminish it. I mean, those are important and we can talk about it. We can write about it, but I want you to write about it in a nuanced way. But sometimes what happens is if we focus on this racist incident that happens, I actually am not learning anything about you. And hear me, this is the prompt. How have your diverse experiences given you a unique perspective, a different perspective that will contribute to the law school community? I want to know about you as a person and something that's core to your identity. This one racist incident is probably not core to your identity. Now, it could be, prove me wrong. I'm sure there's lots of examples where that could be the case. But I still want it centered on you, right? Because what I don't want is for your diversity statement to be something that anyone else in the world could write. I don't want that. I don't want your diversity statement to be something that if I just kind of swapped out a name here or there, some other Black student could write that. Some other Black woman could write that. I don't want that. I want your diversity statement to be so unique to you that no one else can write it. And part of that is how you write and not what you write on. I think a lot of times students focus on the topic. Oh, is this topic overdone? But it's a lot of times how you write it. I've read so many essays on culture and food, but every single one of those essays has it's just really touched me. Now, I'm not saying go out there and write about culture and food, but you have to write about something that is really meaningful to you. And like I said, that you feel like your application would not be complete without it. What are some other common mistakes that students make? Oftentimes, students will use the diversity statement as an addendum, and that is also not what it is. So there are some things in our past that we need to perhaps explain. Maybe we need to explain why we we failed a semester because we were working a lot. Now, having to work few jobs, being first gen, all great fodder for a diversity statement. Explaining what happened that semester and why you got those failed grades, not for a diversity statement. Put that in an addendum. You want to understand the difference in the line between a diversity statement and an addendum, because a diversity statement, again, is really talking about how your perspective is going to help, contribute to your classmates' experiences, the law school community as a whole, how it's going to be a benefit, the experiences that you've had, how it shaped your perspective, how it's changed you, how it's fundamentally changed how you think. And this is, again, because you're going to be in classrooms with Socratic methods, you're going to be debating the reasonableness of laws, you're going to be thinking through what legal jurisprudence should be, and they don't want everyone to have the same experiences. So, this is a situation, an opportunity for you to explain to them how you are going to help them not create an echo chamber. But if you're talking to me about such and such grade or such and such thing that happened that contributed to this, or why you had to take time off, and you're not actually talking to me about a diverse perspective, you're just kind of explaining what happened, or, explaining some things that overcame, but that are not exactly, core to your identity or core to your perspectives, then that's something that should really go in an addendum. That is another very, very common mistake that I see students make, and it's honestly a misuse of the different parts of the application. You guys have heard me say this so many times. Your application is like a puzzle, right? It's a puzzle. You've got a few different pieces, and they all go somewhere, right? My right top corner piece does not go at the bottom left corner. It goes at the right top corner. So you need to figure out, I have all of these stories, where do they go? Some of your stories go in your personal statement. Some of your stories go in your diversity statement. Some things go in your addendum. And that's really important to be able to understand where different things go. Another common mistake that I see students make is that they treat the diversity statement as an issue piece. This is your opportunity, you feel like, to explain to me that there are only 2% of Black women, that only, 5% of lawyers are African American, that we need more representation because of this, this, and that. And all of these are true. None of these are actually about you, though. This is not your opportunity to teach admissions something. This is not your opportunity to educate them on systemic racism. This is not your opportunity to educate them on police brutality or whatever the issue is. It doesn't even necessarily have to be about race. You're not educating them about something in your diversity statement. You are also not advocating for a certain policy position in your diversity statement. This is not your time to speak about the difference between Israel and Palestine and how you feel about the issue. No, this is your time to talk about your particular experience, your diversity. It's only one page, double-spaced, right? So really, at the beginning, you should kind of, define your diversity, make sure I understand what it is you're going to be talking to me about. Maybe give me a story or a narrative, some imagery to really make me feel that, to illustrate it. And then explain to me what that perspective shift is, or how it's changed you, how it's, really shifted how you view the world and interact with others. You don't have, pages and pages to talk about an issue, because every sentence that you spend talking about not yourself is a sentence that is misused and mishandled. So you want to make sure in your diversity statement, in all of your statements really, but especially in your diversity statement, because it's so short, and some schools have even shorter diversity statements. Some schools, their diversity statements are only 350 words, right? And so you really, really need to make sure that you're using each of those words carefully to illuminate more about who you are. I want to learn more about you, not necessarily learn more about an issue. The last common mistake that I see students make with diversity statements is that they forget the principles that we talk about in your personal statement. So in your personal statement, right, I'm telling you to be narrative centered, narrative focused, candidate centered. I'm talking about really focusing on you, showing and not telling, using that imagery. And sometimes students nail that in their personal statement. They do, they nail that. They're like, got it. And then they give me the diversity statement draft and I'm like, what happened? What happened to all the things that we talked about? What happened to showing and not telling? What happened to focusing on yourself? What happened to being, narrative and using imagery? What happened to good writing? What happened to structure? I tell you guys to outline your personal statements. Outline your diversity statements. Don't just start writing. I don't care how short the essay is. It could be 250 words. It could be 1,000 words. I can always tell when an essay has no structure. When you're just kind of writing until you get to the word count and then you're like, I think that's kind of it. No. Your diversity statement should be just as strong as your personal statement. Sometimes people's diversity statements are stronger than their personal statements, but your diversity statement should be a strong piece of writing. I want you to, no matter what optional essays you're writing, if it's a diversity statement, if it's a YS essay, if it's a public interest scholarship, make sure that each piece of writing is at the same caliber. They're looking at things holistically, and you don't want them to be like, wow, she tried really hard for her personal statement, but what happened to the rest of her application? Clearly, she doesn't care that much. You don't want them thinking that. You want to make sure that no matter what essay it is, you are giving 110%. You are doing multiple drafts. You are iterating. You are having it looked at by somebody. You are having structure. You are outlining. You are thinking intentionally about the stories that you're putting into your essay. These are all important for any essay that you write in the application process, any essay that you write in life. You want to make sure that you have structure, that you're taking it seriously, but especially when your application is being looked at holistically, every single piece of writing should ideally just be as strong as the others, because you don't want a really strong personal statement and a really weak optional essay. It will detract overall from your application, and in some cases it would have been better if you just didn't write it. I always say, you want to take advantage of all the optional statements. You want to write them. But if you don't think you can write an essay well, and again, most people can write a strong diversity statement, but if you're not feeling like it's authentic, if you're not feeling like you have a core piece of your identity that is missing from the other parts of your application, if you've really thought broadly about the term diversity and not just limiting yourself to socioeconomic, race, or gender, but you've thought broadly about it but still don't think that there's something authentic you want to say and it's seeming forced, I don't want you to write a bad essay. I would rather your application be strong in and of itself without that essay than to have an essay that detracts from your overall package. So to recap, what are the common mistakes that students make with their diversity statements? The first is that they don't think that they have anything that's diverse because they have a limited view of what diversity means. And they don't necessarily understand the takeaway, the point of a diversity statement, that it's about what perspectives you have that are going to contribute to the law school community in the way that you interact with others and interact with the world. Then students often look at the diversity statement as an adversity statement. And by doing that, they sometimes forget all the beautiful and positive things about their diversity and only focus on the things that they've overcome. In doing that, sometimes students center maybe a negative incident instead of centering themselves, meaning that they don't learn as much about them as I would have loved. The next thing is that students confuse the diversity statement and the addendum often. And they talk about things in their diversity statement that really are better suited for an addendum because they're just explaining away situations without talking to me about, what perspective it's going to bring, again, to the law school community. Sometimes students center an issue too much, meaning that they are focused on teaching me something, teaching me about systemic racism, for example, teaching me about, global cultural conflict, but they're not actually showing me more about themselves as a person. And then, of course, the last is that students often forget the principles that we work on with the personal statement. They don't have structure, they don't have narrative writing or imagery, they're not candidate-centered, and they're not showing instead of telling. So hopefully those tips while you're writing your diversity statement are helpful. Like I said, in the link below, I do have a complete guide to diversity statements. It's only $27, and that will really help you as you are trying to understand this essay, understand if it's right for you to write this essay, and understand how you can use it to strengthen your overall application without being duplicative of other parts of your application. As always, if you find this video helpful, make sure that you share it with your friends. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast. So guys, I am praying for you. I am praying for your scores. I am praying for your essays. I am praying for your stress, your anxiety, your mental health, that you would find peace, mindfulness, and joy on this journey. Of course, you know, if you need anything, I am right here. I am just an email away. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to see how I can help you on this journey. Don't forget to look at the links below for either the personal statement breakdown or the diversity statement guide. And I will see you guys very soon, right back here next week. And I wish you a peaceful and joyful week.